Food is one of the most important things you'll ever buy. And yet most people never bother to think about their food and where it comes from. People spend a lot more time worrying about what kind of blue jeans to wear, what kind of video games to play, what kind of computers to buy.
Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his war power to emancipate slaves was caused by the escalating scope of war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military necessity.
Pluto lost its official status as a planet yesterday, when the International Astronomical Union downsized the solar system from 9 to 8 planets. Although there had been passionate debate at the IAU General Assembly meeting in Prague about the definition of a planet and whether Pluto met the specifications, the audience greeted the decision to exclude it with applause.
Environment problems caused by hard rock mining involve water pollution by metals themselves, chemicals used in processing, acid drainage, and sediment. Metals and metal-like elements in the ore are toxic and prone to cause trouble by ending up in nearby streams and water tables as a result of mining operations.
The core of the problem was the immense disparity between the country's productive capacity and the ability of people to consume. Great innovations in productive techniques during and after the war raised the output of industry beyond the purchasing capacity of U.S. farmers and wage earners.
Ever since I remembered, Father woke up at 5:30 every morning, made us all breakfast and read newspaper. After that he would go to work. He worked as a writer. It was a long time before I realized he did this for a living.
Conferences are always scheduled on the third Wednesday of the month. Conferences are always scheduled on the third Wednesday of the month.
It is interesting to observe the development of language skills of toddlers. It is interesting to observe the development of language skills of toddlers.
Higher fees make students think more critically about what universities can offer. Higher fees make students think more critically about what universities can offer.
The health center is situated at the corner of the university behind the library. The health center is situated at the corner of the university behind the library.
The students were instructed to submit their assignments before Friday. The students were instructed to submit their assignments before Friday.
All students must return the books to the college library before the end of the term. All students must return the books to the college library before the end of the term.
Most universities have libraries with digital and physical copies of journals. Most universities have libraries with digital and physical copies of journals.
There will be a guest lecturer visiting the psychology department next month. There will be a guest lecturer visiting the psychology department next month.
The books are filled with drawings of machines invented when he was a student. The books are filled with drawings of machines invented when he was a student.
"39.5% of Californian residents do not speak English at home." "39.5% of Californian residents do not speak English at home."
The water cycle in nature is depicted in the graph below. It demonstrates the procedure in action. Evaporation, transportation, precipitation, and surface runoff are the steps. The first process, according to this graph, is evaporation in the sun, with water from the blue sea producing clouds in the sky. The second process involves the movement of clouds over green and gray mountains, and the third involves precipitation, which causes water to condense into surface runoffs. Surface runoffs into the ocean are the last step. This graph is really informative. To sum it up,
Information on e-waste is shown in the graph below. Electronic trash, electric waste, and their percentages are among the items. Monitors have a value of roughly 10% of electronic trash, as shown in this graph. This graph shows that the value of computers, phones, fax machines, and printers in electronic trash is higher, at about 15%. The value of washing machines, dryers, air conditioners, and vacuum cleaners in terms of energy waste is roughly 30%, which is the highest. The value of televisions in electronic waste is the lowest, at roughly 10%, as you can also observe from the graph. This graph is really informative. To sum it up,
Information on various forms of recycling is shown in the graph below. Thermal recycling, chemical recycling, and material recycling are among the items. This graph demonstrates that the value of recycling is around 1/855 million tons. This graph demonstrates that the value of material recycling is higher, at almost 2 million tons. This graph demonstrates that the highest figure for thermal recycling is approximately 5,200,000 tons. This graph also shows that the value for chemical recycling is the lowest, at about 0.38 million tons. This graph is really informative. To sum it up,
Gross national happiness is depicted in the graph below. On the map, information about various regions is shown. There is a sizable circle with the name GNH in the center. The big circle is surrounded by many smaller ones. Health, time usage, education, good governance, community vitality, living standards, psychological well-being, and cultural variety and resilience are represented by the little circles on this graph. And these tiny circles are, in turn, various shades of red, green, purple, blue, and brown. In summary, a variety of factors influence gross national happiness.
I'm Steve Pinker, a Johnstone family professor in the psychology department at Harvard College. After contemporary scientific research of the mind, the cognitive revolution began at Harvard. If you study something like the mind and consider yourself to be a scientist, you will immediately run into the issue of what to do with the so-called mental contents, which include thoughts, feelings, images, plans, and laws, but which you cannot see, taste, or feel. How can you even start with a science of mind when, as a scientist, you're supposed to be researching things that you can see, measure, and manipulate? The psychology that predominated in the middle of the 20th century, when it simply stopped talking about mental contents, provides the answer. When we talk about how computers work, you can't avoid computing internal states to them. This is the behaviorism school, and it grew to dominate American psychology until the early 1950s, when a number of scientists with connections to Harvard began to reconsider the entire idea. If you could say that about a piece of metal and weren't being unscientific, why should you be on the scientific side to say that about a person? Computers have memory, goal states, and they carry out plans. The end result, which was given the name cognitive science, combined computer science, artificial intelligence, and later neuroscience with linguistics, experimental psychology, and people who study other humans in the lab. This included famous linguist Noam Chomsky's theories, who was a Society Fellow at Harvard.
boys have dominated the class for ages. But that's not the case anymore today. The performance of 15-year-old boys and girls in reading, maths, and science was investigated in a recent survey by the OECD, a club of primarily wealthy nations. Math scores are still slightly higher for boys, and there is a fairly equal gender split in science. Boys are 50% more likely than girls to fall short of basic criteria in all three areas, but the disparity is apparent when it comes to the pupils who truly struggle. According to research, doing assigned homework is associated with improved math, reading, and science achievement. Boys are 17% more likely than girls to play cooperative online games every day, suggesting that they spend more of their leisure time in the virtual world. They utilize the internet more as well. Peer pressure is a third factor. Many males conclude early on that they are simply too cool for school, which increases the likelihood that they will act out in class. For this, teachers give them a grade. Boys score better on tests that are not anonymous. When teachers don't know the gender of the student they are grading, the gender difference in reading actually shrinks by a third. How therefore may this gap be closed? It would be beneficial to encourage males to do more homework and limit their screen time. But most importantly, all students would gain from a rejection of gender preconceptions. In nations with the greatest schools, boys read significantly more fluently than girls. Girls in Shanghai also do exceptionally well in arithmetic. They do better than boys from any other country in the globe.
If a couple have a pair of children, how many children do they have? If a couple have a pair of children, how many children do they have?
What is the process of breaking down plastic and glass and using it again? What is the process of breaking down plastic and glass and using it again?
What do people hold overhead when it is raining? What do people hold overhead when it is raining?
What device do you use to measure your weight? What device do you use to measure your weight?
What is the name of a building where you can borrow books? What is the name of a building where you can borrow books?
What is the opposite direction of sunrise? What is the opposite direction of sunrise?
If you like our video, kindly subscribe our channel and also press below bell icon. Thank you.